Hello and welcome to episode number 5 of the Inspired series, brought to you by HCL Technologies, the official partner of Cricket Australia for digital technology over the next few years. Hi, my name is Mel Jones. Welcome along. I've thoroughly enjoyed bringing you the first of the 4 series, and this one I'm a little bit excited about as well, because we have some magnificent guests to introduce you to in a moment. Before we begin, on behalf of HCL Technologies and Cricket Australia, I would like to acknowledge the lands in which we bring this webinar series to you. I'm here in Melbourne. I'm on Wurundjeri land, and we acknowledge the people of the Kulin Nation. For people over in Perth, the Nyunga and the Yorulga people of the Bibbulin Nation in Perth, and the Jagera people of the Turnbull Nation in Brisbane. We also acknowledge the lands in which you are watching on today as well, and acknowledge and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. Now, unfortunately, like a lot of people probably watching today, you're in lockdown in Melbourne, just like I am, so we are going virtual once again. Wherever you are joining us from, though, we hope that your families are well, happy and safe, and you're about to be thoroughly entertained by 2 leading figures in Australian cricket. HCL is a leading global technology company that helps global enterprise reimagine and transform their businesses through digital technology transformation and empower them with technology for the next decade today. As we dive into Australia's ecosystem of cricket, business and life through a range of leaders, including players, legends, coaches and executives. Their stories are also HCL stories. As I mentioned, this is episode number 5. The 4 that we've had so far, the first one was brilliant. We had the 3 captains of the Australian men's and women's teams on in Meg Lanning, Aaron Finch and Tim Payne, talking all things captaincy and leadership. Then it went through from the seriousness of that, plus a little bit of banter, through to the joy of cricket with Elisa Healy, Pat Cummins and Nathan Lyon. Onto the rise of women's cricket with 3 absolutely inspirational leaders in the game in Rachel Haynes, Belinda Clark and Jodie Hawkins. And then the last one was thoroughly amusing, even though we were talking all things overcoming adversity. Today, though, we put the spotlight back on leadership, but from the coach's perspective. And the 2 head coaches of the Australian men's and the Australian women's cricket team, we're going to be talking all things planning, communication, the role beyond the boundary rope, and fostering a sense of togetherness in a squad of unique players and personalities to achieve that one common goal. In Perth, we follow one man's rise through the coaching ranks post an illustrious international playing career with one of the most dominant men's test teams of the modern era. And in Brisbane, we chat to a guy who's been at the forefront of a lot of changes within women's cricket over the last decade or so, and he's helped drive a lot of the culture and performance of the Australian women's cricket team, who are certainly one of the beacons in Australian sport at the moment. Today is the Coaches Roundtable. Let's get into it, because I've got 2 guests absolutely waiting, champing at the bit to talk all things coaching as well. From one of the most formidable opening partnerships in Test cricket history, Justin Langer's newest partnership with the Australian men's team has been in many ways just as influential. Justin made his international debut in 1993 against a feared West Indian bowling attack and signalled the start of an impressive career with a courageous second half century. After years as a middle order batter, the proud Western Australian was elevated to being an opener in 2001. Here he thrived alongside fellow opener and great mate Matthew Hayden, with the pair making over 5,600 runs together at Test level for an opening partnership of an amazing 51. Following retirement at the end of a 5-zip home Ashes win series in 2007, I think we all remember that one, Justin has coached West Australia and the Perth Scorchers and took the Australian job in an interim position in 2016 before taking the full-time role in May of 2018. Since then, how about this? Made a World Cup semi-final in 2019, regained the Ashes on English soil in the same year, and now holds the number 1 ranking for both the Test and T20 sides in international formats. JL, all the way from Perth, welcome.
Hey Mel, how are you? That's a very nice introduction. It's a nice way to start a Friday, particularly as I'm currently in quarantine, so no one can tell me how good I am. So you've just told me, and that makes me feel so much better. Thank you so much.
Now, we were just chatting before we came on air. You said you've done a lot of these over the last little bit. I would love to know which one springs to mind as one that you sat down, you had an opportunity to talk to another coach that you always wanted to chat to, or chatted about a certain topic.
Oh wow! Had some unbelievable opportunities. I've been in 2 coaching forums since COVID kicked off actually, and one guy who I had no idea about is a guy called Scott Robinson, who coaches the Crusaders in New Zealand, and he's a bit different. Like, he's a bit of a hippie, but my gosh, I've learned so much from him. He's been really, really interesting. And I see they've just won the title again. So I've had a bit to Trent Robinson as well, and it's really interesting because I'm more an AFL person from Perth. But to be able to learn from different sports, Trent Robinson, incredibly impressive. I've spent some time with Will Weaver, the basketball coach in Sydney, and mate, he's good humour as well. So I've just had so many great opportunities, and I say this with great respect because we're in Perth. I'm in quarantine at the moment. I say this with respect and compassion, but this COVID period, there's nothing I haven't enjoyed about it. I mean, last year we were on the road for about 300 days of the year. And to see my kids every day, to have home-cooked meals, to sleep in my own bed, to be in my own garden, and to see some friends and to just be home and have time has been a real blessing and a real gift for me personally and for our players.
Well, usually at the end of these sessions, I say I've got a pep in my step. I've already got one straight away, so this is going to be great. I want to come back to a couple of things that you just mentioned then in terms of coaches in the gritty part of it all. But before that, let me introduce our second guest in Matthew Mott, who is the head coach of the Australian women's cricket team. August 13 was International Left-Handers Day. So the Inspired series is having a belated celebration as Motty, just like JL, was also a left-handed opening bat. Matthew's elite cricket career began in his native state of Queensland, where he made a Sheffield Shield debut in 1994. Following on from winning the Sheffield Shield title with the Bulls, Matthew relocated to the wonderful city of Melbourne to see out his career at the end of 2004, where he made 7 first-class centuries across a 66-match career. His foray into coaching would be a successful one, leading New South Wales Blues to a Sheffield Shield title in 2008. And then he then tried his hand in the English county system with Glamorgan, before turning to being the head coach of the Australian women's cricket team in 2015. Since then, he's overseen 3 Ashes triumphs, 2 T20 World Cup titles, including that magnificent day back on March 8 at the MCG. Matthew Mott, welcome along.
G'day, Mel. How you going?
I'm great. There's a few happy girls out there in Australia at the moment with the announcement of the Australian team to take on the Kiwis at this end of September. I'm guessing there'd probably be some excitement but nerves for you as a coach as well after a period that no one's ever gone through before.
Yeah, it is, Mel. I think there's a few players. Obviously, we had to name a squad of 18 just to cover our bases. It's as JL will know, we've been in a lot of conversations about what happens if we get a positive case. So, a few players were probably awoken, particularly some down in Melbourne, and I think they were delighted to potentially get up here to Brisbane. And just looking outside here, it's a perfect day, about 24 degrees. So definitely a great carrot to get up here and play some cricket. And we're all excited. I think what you said there is spot on. I think you get a bit nervous the longer you go without coaching a team. You start to second guess yourself. And I know JL's probably thinking the same. It'd be just good when we all get back together in and around each other, and that will bring us a lot of comfort, I think. We haven't really been together since that beautiful day in Melbourne, and I think any time we get together will be special in the next couple of months.
Yeah, most definitely. Okay, now, because both of you are coaches, I'm going to get my coaching hat on, and we're just going to warm up first, so nice little easy one just to relax into a little bit. We asked Tim, Aaron and Meg in the first session what leadership meant to them, so I'm just going to stick with a really broad one to begin with. JL, what does leadership mean to you?
Well, I think it's one of the most important things in life, whether it's in your family, whether it's in your business, whether it's in the team. Leadership's everything. So that's one thing I'll say. It's a big responsibility. Leadership's a lot different than management. It's a lot easier to be a manager than a leader because leaders have to make decisions. And I've learned that over and over. The toughest thing about leadership is you have to have the courage to make decisions. So that's the big thing. I think as a leader, you have to know what you stand for and what you won't compromise on. You have to know what you stand for. And I think most importantly, as a leader, you've got to walk the talk. Anyone can talk a good game, but you have to, through your actions. There's an old saying, Mel, if you preach excellence and walk mediocrity, you're nothing but a common liar. So in other words, leadership is about walking the talk. Anyone, and it comes to values, it comes to, you can make the best speech, but unless you walk that talk, then it doesn't mean much. So leadership's about leading by example, knowing what you stand for, and bringing people with you. That's building relationship and bringing people with you.
And I guess there's a sense of consistency that you'd like in leadership as well. In these times, though, where things are changing so often, do you need a little bit of fluidity and flexibility in your leadership as well?
Oh, absolutely. I've used these words a number of times when it comes to coaching in Australia now, because there's so many other options, a bit like the players, but we have to be creative, we have to be agile. And the other really important thing about leadership is I've learned through this period, I probably learned it in life. If I could give I'll get back to that in a minute. If I could give my younger self advice, I wouldn't worry so much. But what I learned is you can own, and it sounds like it's almost like a cliche, but you can only control the controllables. And that's what drives us crazy. If we get concerned about things that are out of our control, then it's trouble. So we focus on that, and it gives you the best. And I remember my grandmother, Biddy, great lady. And this would be the advice I gave myself as a youngster, and I give myself every day. Now I can see a photo on my wall here in the study.
Yep.
I'd go there to her house for lunch, and she'd make these cheese and pickle sandwiches, right? And the cheese was about 1 centimetre thick, the pickle was about 1 centimetre thick, the white bread was 1 centimetre thick, and I was trying to be an elite athlete. So I'm going, no, you got to, look, mate, you're going to get me fat. She goes, don't worry, it's good for the soul, darling. I'm going, yeah, okay. But this is the lesson my nana taught me with the cheese and pickle sandwich and a cup of tea and the cake. I'd say as a youngster, I used to worry way too much, Mel. I'd go, oh, Nan, I'm really worried about this. And she'd go, is there anything you can do about it, darling? I go, no, there's nothing I can do about it. She goes, well, don't worry about it then, darling. And then she'd say, oh, Nan, I'm really worried about this. And she goes, anything you can do about it, darling? I go, no, yeah, there's something I can do about it. And then she goes, well, don't worry about it then, darling. And it's such a great lesson for me in leadership. There's something you can do about it, don't worry about it. If there's nothing you can do about it, don't worry about it. Just stay nice and calm and control the controllables.
I feel like we're pretty much on the same page in terms of that. But for me, I all those things that you said resonated with me. But the biggest thing is you don't need a title to lead. And that's something that we believe strongly in our cricket team at the moment. We've had some amazing leaders emerge. And I think it's a product of our environment. Our leaders that have titles are trying to empower everyone else to lead. And when you come into the Australian women's cricket team, from day one, you're expected to lead. And that comes down to articulating what our values that we've thought out, what they mean to you and how they apply to you. And how you, as you said, walk the walk. How are you going to walk the walk? What does fearless mean for you as an individual coming into our team? And what is team first? All those sort of things. I think unless you've got a leaderful environment, you haven't got much. Because as you know, we can preach all day long about what we think's important, but unless around the water cooler or around the drinks breaks, unless the right chats are going on there and leaders are leading, your messages fall really flat. So to me, leadership.
I love that word, leaderful teams. Can you expand on that a bit more? You just have, but a bit more of that.
Yeah, it's actually, it's not my quote. It's a guy from over your way, Rick Charlesworth. When I first took on the role here, people were talking about women's sport compared to men's sport. One of the things he said with the Australian women's hockey team, that was his goal, was to make a leaderful team. Make sure that, you need your traditional model with a captain and a vice captain. But, I'm not a huge believer in leadership groups as such, because I expect, everyone has the potential to lead. And, there's so many young leaders we've got at the moment. There's Sophie Molyneux's in our team. Other players are just hanging off what she does. So in a great environment, which we're trying to create, Sophie Molyneux is just as important as Meg Lanning, because that's our next generation of people. And she understands that generation as well. So, Mel and I have spoken a few times on these things, but I just think it's important that, and it goes a bit to your grandmother Biddy's comment as well, is it's never going to be perfect. Our environment's far from perfect, but one thing that we try and do is make sure we learn from our mistakes and we get better every time we make a mistake. So And I think that's part of this modern world we're in now. Like we've sat through meetings, and it's not about delivering perfection anymore. It's about tying it up with wire and keeping the show on the road. That famous line you and I are really clinging to at the moment, especially around these series. It's going to be so clunky and there's going to be mistakes everywhere. But we just got to put a show on for the public.
And what about? Sorry for stealing that line from you yesterday, Motty, for all the media, the Johnny Williamson line. But what a legend he was. In your not just now in your team, but who's inspired you as leader, you personally? But so one, you talked about Sophie, the leaders in your team, but also who's inspired you as a leader and why?
I will go with one inside the team who was a guest last week, and we discussed before coming on here. But to me, Rachel Haynes just epitomises leadership. I would class her as a reluctant leader. I think she doesn't need the title, and if there was someone better for the role, I'm sure she'd step aside. But what she's brought to our team over the last few years is a real calculated and calmness around things. She's got a very high moral stance on things, and she will compromise on certain things, but essentially she'll do what's right for the team regardless of whether it benefits her or not. And she's been an amazing ally for Meg Lanning. Probably on a deeper level has a little bit more empathy than Meg, and some of the deficits that Meg would admit to, that those gaps have been filled by Rachel Haynes. And I just love being around her. She's one of those people you love listening to. She's a mature beyond her years, and quite often pulls me up on things. I can drift off course a little bit, as you can as well. And she's pretty quick to snap us back on track and make sure that we're doing the right things as well.
I'm going to jump in very quickly, JL.
There you go, you're back.
So I'm just going to jump in before you get too carried away and get rid of my job. I'm just sitting back here thinking, my questions are gone.
He was just going to double his invoice.
I know, this is it, isn't it? Speaking of clunky and things not quite working, apologies for the little technical glitch there. Both of you guys, I'd love to get your sense on the word talent. So head coaches of both our national teams, I think you would constantly hear people coming to you going, this player has amazing talent. And I think most people, when they say that, say it because they're scoring lots of runs or taking lots of wickets. Motty, I might start with you. When you look at a player and think talent, what other traits and aspects are involved in that word talent other than just the end result? Are you looking at character traits? Are you looking at their physical makeup, their personality? Is there a whole lot of elements coming in to make that talented player?
Yeah, that's one of the great questions I've had, I reckon, because we've been talking about this a lot. We have an internal measure at Cricket Australia, and I know Justin is going to try and elevate it with the men's team, but it's called, there's a lot of acronyms in Australian cricket at the moment. It's called the EPQ, which is Elite Performance Qualities. And the way the journey of this measurement for us was, got a whole heap of coaches, talent managers, selectors, everyone basically cross-section of cricket that had any idea on what it takes to be a successful cricketer. And the model at the time was, what are all the characteristics that Meg Lanning and Steve Smith have to make them world's best players? Elise Perry, throw all those guys in the mix. Probably Marnus at the moment. What stands out for them, and how can we measure some of those things and assess it? So this model's been come up with along with some sports psychs, and it measures teamwork, like whether people like playing alongside you, your ability for your resilience, your adaptability, your professionalism. All those sort of things are done in a questionnaire, and it's a really opportune time to give feedback to players about where they are in their journey. And you say about talent, it's impossible to judge talent because you don't know how far they've come from or what's left in there. And I think some good judges can identify some players that have that capability. But as JL will say, we played junior cricket with people at 16 that you thought were going to be superstars that weren't playing the game at 19. So I don't think anyone's got that crystal ball. If you've got talent, it's certainly a huge advantage. But more importantly, I think that adaptability and resilience, and in this modern world that throws so much at you, I think those are the things that we need to bring more to the fore, because good players will always be good players, but the very best have those other qualities at the top of the tree. And when in our team, when we measure Meg Lanning, she's like a 5 out of 5 in all of these. So we know it works. Young players coming in, they might be 3s now, but have they got that capability to move up and be more professional? And even in terms of modifying some, undesirable behaviours, rather than saying someone's a person or, they're lazy or whatever, it's actually been able to go, well, you're really good when it comes to the game stuff and the training. You're excellent, but away from the game, you're not very professional. You've let your diet slip, or you're not where you should be in terms of physical capability. So that's been a great tool for us. I know JL through Michael Lloyd is going to get it going a little bit more in the men's team as well, but I couldn't speak more highly of that.
And JL, I'll ask you too, because it actually came up. I was reading For Cap and Country by Jesse Hogan, and in it, your chapter spoke about, I think it was Robert Craddock spoke about your talent or lack thereof when you were coming through the game. And I know as a player, it hurts, it grates quite a bit, doesn't it? But now as you as a coach looking at players, how do you see the whole sort of sphere of talent?
John Buchanan once said, and I've used this a lot, that you judge a champion by their longevity. Not by champions. The most talented players are the ones who have some longevity, because what that means, they've got to have resilience. They've got to learn how to physically and mentally and technically and emotionally. They've got to keep learning how to get better. So I'd probably say talent to me is about the best learners who keep getting better and better and better and get through the tough times. There's a couple of words I hate in my life. One is potential. Oh, he's got so much potential. Oh, really? He's got so much potential, has he? Well, let's just see how he goes. And the other one is the word try. In elite sport, I think the harder you try, the worse it gets, because when you want to try really hard and you start tightening up. So potential and try, and probably talent, because it's such a obscure word, are the 3 words that bug me as a coach, and probably did as a player. But certainly that talent, you see. And look, for example, and there's another thing, a philosophy I have as a coach, and I had it through my playing career, is I will always pick character over cover drives. So in other words, there's so much talent out there, guys who can, in my game, guys who can hit boundaries and bowl fast or spin the ball. But I'd rather pick, so we picked Marnus Labuschagne 18 months ago, and people thought we were crazy. We couldn't pick him on his numbers, but we just saw this incredible young person who would play for nothing, loves the game, works so hard, great around the group. And we couldn't have dreamed has been successful as he has been. But, he's got talent in all areas, not just his cover drive or his cut shot. And that's why we selected him. And hopefully we've been rewarded for that, because we had the courage to select someone who had talent other than a fancy cover drive or pull shot.
JL, do you think that's one of the biggest changes since you were a player and seeing coaches coaching you to coaches today? Is that back in the day they were just concerned about your cover drive, a little bit of fitness, but basically about the skills of the game. Whereas today it's such a broader role within the game. It's not just about the technical side of things, but there is so much more of this people management and development side of things as well. Has that probably been one of the biggest changes since you were playing?
Yeah, maybe it's been more formalised, but I asked Motty the question before about who the great leaders he has met or have influenced him. And there's no way I'd be sitting here now without the great mentors and coaches and leaders that I've had. I mean, I've got this great bookshelf right in front of me, and I can peel off half the books in here. I've either met them or they've had an influence on my life, or I'm just reading about them and had an influence on my life, right? Now, the reason I say that is because amongst the great mentors I've had, whether it was Alan Border, my first captain, who was tough, man, he was so tough, or Bobby Simpson, my God, he was scary tough. It might not have been the formalised mental health and the formalised look after our players, but my God, they were really hard on me, like most of the mentors. But to this day, they're the most influential people in my life, and they're the people who've been the toughest on me are to this day great mentors I had, and the people I care most about, the people I most respect, and the people who are still my best friends. So the point is, Mel, that it might not have been sports psychologists back then, but in a way they were sports psychologists, and they were hard on me because they cared about me and they had a huge influence. And to this day, they're the people are still my best friends. So it was different back then than it is now, but it's still, you know, human beings care about. There's the great word culture, which we all talk about. So everyone talks about culture. When I first took over, well, how are you going to change the culture of the men's team? I said, well, that's about behaviours, but actually the word culture is derived from the Latin word cultus, which means care. So therefore, and what I've learned about leadership is that it's about caring for people, and people with their different personalities will do that in different ways. But when we care about people, we'll try and get the best out of them. And if you do that, you'll get the best results for your team and for the individuals, and you'll have a everlasting influence on their life, I think.
Yeah. Motty, you would have been in the same, coming through first-class cricket at the sort of same time as JL. There would have been some hard nuts in your time. I've heard the phrase Labrador used to describe you too sometimes.
Yeah, look, I think, as JL said, care is part of everything that we do. And one of the things I reckon he was definitely alluding to there was tough love. And I think we all see that. You know, when we judge ourselves, we want people to critically assess us, but we want to know it's coming from a good place. So all those guys he mentioned, yeah, my first captain was Alan Border, and to hear him even talk to you was for me a lifelong dream. But then for him to give you some really candid advice on where your game's at, you know, you just loved it. So I think all of our, and that's been the thing that we've really tried to drive. I reckon in our team, we didn't have those honest conversations. I think that's been the biggest groundswell in our team, is that we've gone from a team that would get in a team meeting and people would be scared to step on each other's toes and not say the wrong thing. And there'd be elephants in the room everywhere. There are herds of elephants when we first did it. But now people will call out stuff, whether it's behavioural or a game situation where a decision's been made. And that, to me, that just sums up that word culture in a way that people are going to call each other out. They're going to be accountable, but they're going to do it from a really good place. And people then can respect that, and they know that, you know, someone's doing it for the right reason. So, yeah, definitely different environment. I think people always want to compare male and female sports. It's the first thing you normally get asked, is what's the difference? There's so many similarities now, and I think it's more generational. I think the players, male and female players today, expect to be coached differently. They expect to be a lot more collaboration in the decision making than we were used to. We pretty much turned up and we were told what to do, and we accepted that. And you sat in the corner and you did what you were meant to do, and occasionally you got out of your lane ropes and you were back in there quickly enough as one of the older players would chip you back in. So the whole way that you coach now is so different. You can't have the candid conversations that you probably did back then. You've got to really make sure you sandwich some of that critical feedback in with a fair bit of praise as well.
I'm of the view with that, Motty, that, and I've said this many times, honest conversations can fix everything. And what I've learned in leadership is that through honest conversations, you build trust. And then with trust, you can have more honest conversations. It's like this beautiful cycle, but it all starts with having honest conversations. Then what happens, when you're going to have the really tough conversations, they actually become a lot easier, because the players you're talking to or your staff you're talking to, you've built this level of trust and this foundation of trust. So then you can have hard conversations. It's the Australian way, as I know it, to look someone in the eyes and tell them the truth. But going back to the very first point about walking the talk, as a leader, you've also, if you're going to preach, we're going to have honest conversations. When people give me feedback, I'm going to take it as well, because that's about this building of trust. And I can't be saying, I'm going to have honest conversations with you, but I'm not going to have you can't have honest conversations with me because I don't like to hear what you say. That's not right. You've got to be able to have honest conversations, and you've got to demand feedback for yourself as a leader. And if you get that, then you can get better, and you build that trust, which in great teams is such an important foundation.
Yeah, I agree. I think it leads into a great little story, and you talk about feedback. When I first got in the role with New South Wales, I felt internally that I'd probably been promoted ahead of my station. I wasn't quite ready. But we had a physio who you guys will know quite well, Paddy Farhart, who'd been with the team for 20 years, legend of the game, very lovable character. And he asked me for a walk home after, it was about the third Shield game. We're going all right. And he said, I think we need a walk today. And I was like, okay, well, this is interesting. He's 120 kilos, hates walking. All right, I'll go with you. And so we get to the first block and he asked, how do you think you're going? And I said, oh, yeah, we're going pretty well. I'm happy. And he goes, and the silence was deafening. And he said, you're a bit worried about you. I think you're riding every ball. You know, you're up and down. Every ball you're riding the ball, and it's affecting the players. They don't feel comfortable. They're walking on eggshells around you, and they know what you were like as the assistant coach because you were laid back and chilled and all that. So, just a bit of free feedback. And I didn't like it at the time. I was like, I thought I was going okay, but it was the single best bit of advice I've ever got in my life in terms of coaching because I couldn't see it. I just thought that's how coaches behaved, you know, like, and geez, it was great feedback, and it changed the way I dealt with feedback as well. And I know one of Belinda Clark's greatest sayings, she's feedback's a gift, Motty, and you got to embrace it. So it's certainly something I love, and you said it, JL, as well. You've got to empower your staff to be able to give that as well, and senior players and all players. But you've got to have that trust before you get there. And I knew I trusted Paddy. I knew it was coming from a good place, but you can't fake that either. Like if it comes from a source where you're not so sure, obviously the shackles go up. But definitely being open to feedback is a critical skill for us.
It's a great lesson. I used to have a sign in my office at the WACA, and it said, I never went to Harvard, but I employ a lot of people who did. Yeah. And what I've learned about leadership, you can't do it by yourself, and you've got to have people around you who you trust. And talk about Belinda Clark. I mean, oh my God, what a legend. What a legend. I was so lucky to work with BC in between when Pat Howard finished at Cricket Australia and BC took over in that interim role. My God, she was what an amazing person. She actually sent me a nice text message last night. But you've got to surround yourself with really good people. And in our role, and if you do that, then they give you the fun. I mean, Paddy, how long ago was that, Motty? 20 years ago?
Oh, yeah, no, yeah, 10 or 12, 15, 14 years ago, probably.
The very fact that you're telling that story now goes to show. I mean, and influence can come from all different parts, right?
Yeah.
So, and Paddy Farhart, who is a legend, brilliant. I think about Steve Waugh, the great Steve Waugh, and he was a bit like AB. When he spoke, you listened because he didn't speak much. And I've learned so many lessons from Steve Waugh. One of them was, when things are going great, stay there. When things aren't going great, stay there. So stay as level as possible. Another piece of advice Steve Waugh gave me was always praise publicly and criticise privately. And people often think when you say you're going to have honest conversations, that's confrontational. No, it's just honest conversations, and it doesn't need to be confrontational. But praise publicly and criticise privately. I remember the great Steve Waugh in 1998 talk about, if Steve Waugh was here in my office right now, said, JL, run through the brick wall, I would run as fast as I could. Not because I'm an idiot, but because Steve Waugh, the great leader, wouldn't ask me to go through it unless he'd go through the brick wall himself or unless he thought I could get through it. Right? This is leadership. But in 1998, we were in Hobart and I was on the verge of getting dropped again. And we're at breakfast and Steve Waugh goes, Lane, come here. I said, what is it? What is it, Tug? What is it, Captain? He goes, mate, I don't want you to read any more press. I don't want to listen to any more radio. I don't want to watch the TV. No more newspapers. Mate, I want you in the team. You're the best number 3 in Australia. Your teammates want you in the team. The coach wants you in the team. The selectors want you in the team. Mate, show us what you got. I said, oh, yeah, no worries, Captain. So I'm feeling like Superman because at breakfast, Steve Waugh's giving me this praise in front of the group. Come on. I'm going, yeah, no worries, Captain. I'm ready to go. Even though I was nervous as hell because I'm in shocking form. About 4 hours later, I was walking back at Bellerive Oval. I had my bat and my pads under my arm, and Steve Waugh's being interviewed by one of the media guys. He's got his dictaphone in his hand. It pretty much was his dictaphone in his hand too, because some of the journalists, Motty, and he says to Steve Waugh, as I'm walking past, he goes, So, Steve, you got any advice for Justin Langer? He's obviously not in great form. What advice do you give to someone like Justin Langer in this time? And Tugger goes, yeah, I've got some advice for Justin Langer. Stop reading your shit. So not only is he praising me privately, but he's also praising me publicly. So he's backing me. Just between the two of us, he's backing me to the whole world. Now, the whole point of that, guess what happened 4 days later? I had my best test innings in my whole career. I'm feeling like Superman. And we won an unwinnable test match, which also then was the start of our 16 straight, the second test of our 16 consecutive winning test matches. When you have leadership, we go back to the initial bit, Mel, it's the most important thing in every business, every family, every team, leadership. And Steve Waugh, the great leaders, epitomise that. And they do things, they make their people feel special. And because of that, you run through brick walls for them.
And I can confer too that you mentioned Belinda Clark. She was my captain throughout my entire Australian career as well as state level as well. And Motty, you've spoken about getting out of your lane sometimes, very quick to tap you back in or give you the shoulder charge sometimes. But exactly the same thing as what you said, JL, as well. So privately had those conversations with you and then publicly backed you as well, which made a huge, huge difference, I think, not just to my career, but to a lot of players. Motty, you mentioned the people like to probably put in men's and women's cricket and make sure that they can try and sort of compare the two often. 3 weeks ago, we had the Rise and Rise of women's cricket here on the Inspired series. Rachel Haynes, we've already spoken about as a potential, future leader, not just in cricket, but outside of cricket and in sort of management roles. I'd love to get both of your takes on the female coach. Julia Price coached with the Brisbane Heat and the Big Bash recently. Is there, or at what stage in the future do you think we could see something like a Becky Hammond, who's an assistant coach of the San Antonio Spurs in the NBA, those sorts of roles coming through for females within the men's setup? JL?
Sorry, I just missed that, Mel. I got a nice text message from Scott Thompson, who's on the line, talking about Steve Waugh. So, and Scott Thompson at Toyota and Lexus, my gosh, you talk about people you learn lessons from. We were in America a couple of years ago. So, Scott, this is a big thumbs up to you, mate. We were in America and listen to Scott Thompson talk about his journey through leadership and through Toyota. Outstanding, mate. I get inspired by you, Scotty, so I thought I'd just give you a little thumbs up there, mate. So, Mel, you better start that right.
That's okay.
The last bit.
I'll give you the short version. Becky Hammond in the NBA is an assistant coach with the San Antonio Spurs,
right.
First female there. Yeah. Your thoughts on female coaches coming through the pathway system at the moment? We've got men's coaches in the women's game. How much further in the future do you think we'll be seeing the women's coaches within the men's?
Yeah, good question. I think we can learn a lot. I got asked this question in a presentation a couple of weeks ago. I think one thing I've learned from the women's team and women's sport is just that seems to be that great respect for the game and great respect for the opposition. And I often put it about like the Wallabies. I love watching rugby union, the way they seem to have great respect for the referee, and it's just great respect. I think we can learn a lot from that. I think the women can learn a lot in this new era about professionalism in terms of they're coming into this period where, for me, professionalism is an attitude. Whether you get paid $1 or $10 million, professionalism is an attitude. So it's going to be a really interesting time for women's cricket. I know we're sort of coming through it now, but what we learned when the men's teams become professional, my gosh, there's some lessons in that. I will say this: I've had amazing women leaders I've had through this sport. Christina Matthews, my CEO at the WACA, she is outstanding. I love Chris. Talked about BC before. These are two of my favourite people in the world. So great leaders. So will there be a point where we get women coaches? If they're good, they'll get a chance. Simple.
Yep.
Christina Matthews, she's good. Actually, she's better than good. So she's the CEO of the WACA. BC, she's good. She's better than good. So she's, you know, Mel, you're good. You're great at what you do. You're on the Australian Cricket Board, Cricket Australia Board. So if there's a female coach who comes through who's good, she's great at what she does, and she wants to be involved, why not?
Motty, you've seen a few of them. Shelley Nitschke's in the system. Lisa Kitely coaching the England women's team at the moment. I mentioned Julia Price. Anyone else spring to mind?
Yeah, I think there's a few. Well, I think Mel, and we've discussed this before, I think the next wave is really coming. And I think, unfortunately, the way women's cricket was that we lost a lot of the really smart cricketers to other walks of life. You know, I think BC and Chris stayed in cricket, but didn't really come through coaching as much as you'd expect. They went into other avenues and come back around. But the key now is to identify that and make sure that we've got a pathway. And not every female will want to coach men's cricket, but it'd be great if they did. And I think it's about, pardon me, getting as many as we can into the formal qualifications of level 3 and then them having the choice. So we've recently had Meg Lanning, Rach Haynes, Elise Filani all complete their level 3. We've got a number doing their level 2. And I really see that as part of my role, is to encourage those players to go there. And unfortunately, we lose now that the women's game is in the eye line a bit more. We're losing a lot to the media. We're losing some of our potential coaches down the media avenue. So my job is, I guess...
I'll keep that in the back tier then.
Yeah, exactly. with Matt Betsy is to make sure that we hold on to that talent. And I honestly feel we've got 3 or 4 in our team at the moment, or our setup, that have the potential to cross over men's and women's cricket, because their knowledge is fantastic, and that's what it's about. And as I said, I think Justin sort of summed it up really well there, that there's so many different skills that women can bring to the table that, you know, it might be as an assistant, it might be with a head coach that needs more empathy, or it might have an assistant that needs a head coach with, so whatever it is, it's about them being good at their job. And I think we've got a number there now that there's a critical mass of people that want to stay in the game. So that's the key, is we don't lose them. And I think our system now will support that a lot better.
Yeah.
The other thing is, Mel, is that in cricket, coaching's still quite immature compared to a lot of the other sports. You think about whether it's football, any of the football codes, basketball, where the coach or the manager has been so pivotal. When I started playing, Bob Simpson was the coach, huge influence, but it wasn't that long ago when I was coaching, I was in Western Australia, we had one coach, Daryl Foster, who was the part-time coach.
Yeah.
So, and that's 30 years ago or something. So it's developing, it's evolving, and now it's a great career path.
Yep.
Coaching, because now in the world of professionalism, it's a great career path, and there's so many opportunities there. So I agree with Motty. It's about giving people the opportunity, and let's keep developing it. It's hopefully one of the legacies I'll leave before I die, that we develop great coaches in cricket.
Well, speaking of allowing other people at the table, I'm going to do that right now as well. I had 1,000 more questions for you too, but we've run out of time. Very quickly though, we're going to go to the questions from the audience. The first one is from Sean to both of you. Motty, we might start with you. Can you overcoach?
Oh, 100%. I think that's the most dangerous thing about our profession is, and it starts unfortunately early. You go, like a lot of time, I remember the level 2 that I did many, many years ago. And I think most people were trying to prove their knowledge by examining people's techniques and fault finding. And to me, if you left a player to their own devices, there's a good chance they'll be successful and with good people around them. But if you overcoach them, and my son is at an age now where he's 11 and I'm coaching him, and I am having to not say a thing. Like, we compete in the nets, but I have to bite my tongue. I see flaws everywhere. I just don't coach him, and he knows that. And I think we've all been through that. It's less is more, certainly. I think, and one of the things we always talk about is let them make mistakes. And when they come to you, and help them and all that. If there's glaring things, definitely. And junior kids, like if they're holding the bat the wrong way and stuff like that, that's a different thing. But coaching is about listening more than talking as well. Like that's one of the hardest things. And people will get you to a session and expect you to talk straight away to young kids. And that's a really unfair thing to do. I think you don't know what their journey's been. It might be successful, but I think not saying stuff is so important in what we do, everything that we do, and letting them work it out for themselves, asking some questions about why they've done certain things rather than telling them is very important. Lead them and let them problem solve themselves is the art of coaching.
JL, as you've gotten into your coaching career, is that sort of weighing a little bit? You listen more?
And watch. I don't care what anyone says to me. I just watch what they do, because all the players are going to tell me exactly what I want to hear. So I just watch what they do now, and that's the eyes and ears are important rather than your mouth in coaching. But in 1995, Mel, I wrote Sir Donald Bradman a letter. I was back at the Cricket Academy working with Rod Marsh as a scholarship coach, believe it or not. So it must have been in my soul somewhere, coaching. But I wrote Sir Donald Bradman a letter, and a couple of things were amazing about it. One, I sent the letter on the 16th of August, 1995. I got a typed reply on the 18th of August, 1995. So 2 days later, I got a typed reply. Anyway, the first line of the letter was, "I'm flattered that you believe an octogenarian like myself can help you with your cricket." So there's humility. There's Sir Donald Bradman saying to me. And the last line, the last two sentences of the letter were, "Always trust your instincts and never become a slave to coaching." So, and that was great advice. I think you've got to work it out. And I think the other thing I've learned going from a player to a coach is that the way you played isn't how everyone's got to play.
Yeah.
So a lot of people teach how you did it, but actually everyone's so different. And I remember Steve Smith, the now great Steve Smith, I went from playing at Somerset, Ricky Ponting and Tim Nielsen asked me to come be an assistant with the Australian team straight from playing. I had a hit in Wellington with Steve Smith on the bowling machine, and I had a hit with him for 45 minutes, and I walked back and I said to Ricky Ponting and Tim Nielsen, "Mate, he is hopeless. If he ever plays for Australia as a batsman, I will run from here. I'll swim from here in Wellington back to Perth. He can't play." Because everything I thought were the basics of the game, I'd say, hit a cover drive, and he'd smack it through mid-wicket. And I'd say, play some pull shots. And I said, you got to keep your head still. And he'd swivel like this little cartoon character. My God, everything that I thought, he couldn't do or didn't do. So the point is, everyone's different. Everyone does it different. You just watch. You help them with their strengths. You might have to give them a few little bits of advice every now and then. But, yeah, it's a lot about watching and listening.
There we go. I love the letter too. I'm guessing that's framed somewhere or somewhere close at hand.
Right in this office right now. It's the basis of a kid's book I've just written, actually. It's the great Sir Donald Bradman. What a legend. So,
former Australian great, coach, and now author again. Is this what we're saying?
Well, maybe there's a couple in all my spare time, Mel.
Okay, we've got another question here from Alison Kay. Good leaders have great self-awareness, but is there anything you've been surprised about yourself as a leader? Does anything spring to mind where you've thought, oh, that surprised me a little bit?
Yeah, the biggest one for me is I'm not Superman. It actually takes its toll, and you've got to, and this is truthful, I mean, if you decide you want to be a leader, it's so hard. And the last 2 years, I had no idea what I was getting myself into in this role, and it's really hard. And I'm lucky I've got support from my family. I've got some great friends. And one of the biggest lessons I've learned, and I sort of knew it, but now if I could give any young player or young person advice, is zero social media. And this is the reason why, Mel, because I do not need strangers telling me how good I am. And more importantly, I don't need strangers telling me how bad I am.
Yeah.
So what have I learned is that I'm not Superman. You've got to have really thick skin. You've got to have great discipline. You talk about self-awareness. We're humans, so you take it to heart if people say things about you or your boys or your team or Australian cricket. So you've got to be really tough with that. And sometimes you're not as tough as you think you are.
Yeah. Motty?
Yeah, I think that's another fantastic question, because I think it's something I've really only learnt in the last few years. And to me, when you first get into coaching, you feel like you have to be perfect and you have to be everything to everyone. And the longer you get into it, you just understand that you can't be that person. And I think, they talk about leadership, like sometimes you get in that imposter syndrome. And another little story that when I was first coaching, I'd come through with Moses Enriques, who was a young, talented player. That word talent again, young, talented player coming through. And when I became head coach, I thought that I had to have all the answers. And like every coach, you want to be strong. And he just pulled me aside one day, and he was a young player at this time, and said, Motty, you've got an answer for everything. Like you're never wrong. You're absolutely never wrong. Like if someone challenged you, you're never wrong. And I'm like, really? And it was confronting. It was like, it was so, but he was spot on. I was trying to pretend that I was the strong coach and I had the answers and all that. And as you get older and you get a bit wiser, you understand that it's okay to say, you know what, I stuffed that up. We got that wrong. Yeah. Maybe we can do this better. But I reckon on the self-awareness, the best lesson I learned, and JL talked about that US study trip, which for me was one of the life-changing opportunity. But we had this guy, Wade Gilbert, there, who's a coaching guru, coaches. And the biggest thing he imprinted on me was be authentic, okay? Just be yourself. It's a lot easier. If you are authentic, and, I'm a bit of a rogue, I take the piss a bit and I have fun. If I'm being anything other than that, I'm not being me. And just because you're in a high-powered position as a head coach or whatever, just be yourself, and at least people will respect you for that. If you're trying to be something you're not, they just sniff it out, 100 yards away. So that self-awareness to me is like JL just said. Then I know I'm far from perfect, but I'm cool with that as well. And what I will do is surround myself with people who can fill in those gaps. And the other great line that he came out of that was, and on that theme, is surround yourself with people who disagree but aren't disagreeable. So that to me just is that humility, and you're going to get things wrong. Make sure Shelley Nitschke's got the confidence to say, Motty, I think we might have missed something here or whatever, without me biting the head off and going, no, I got this or whatever. It's like, shit, yeah, you're right, Shell, maybe we need to have a look at that. So that to me, authenticity and surround yourself with people who are prepared to disagree is sort of like what I've tried to really bring into this team in the last couple of years.
Yeah. Hey, Motty, thank you so much, because you've just written 2 chapters of my next book on leadership. Brilliant. That is brilliant. Can we extend this for another hour, Mel, just so I can get some more tips from Motty for the book? But I would say, if you take nothing else from this, for everyone who's listening, that is the best advice you can get in leadership. Be yourself.
Yeah.
Then you can go to sleep every night. If you try and be something else, my gosh, it's hard. Be yourself. And if it works, it works. You've got to make tough decisions. Be yourself. Be yourself. You've been given the position for a reason. And as soon as you try and be outside, not authentic, it's hard work.
Yeah.
We've got one tough question just to round things off for you guys as well. This is from Salia. What age do you think is most important for the development of young cricketers? And I know when I was doing my level 3 coaching course, it was quite a while back, with Darren Lehman and Andrew McDonald, we had this great debate over where the best coaches should be. Should they be coaching at the national level? Should they be in some other area? Where do you think is going to make the most amount of impact age-wise? Motty?
Oh, I think it's it is how long's a piece of string, where they start their journey. What's the like we've all had coaches at 14 who've shaped the way that we've loved cricket, and I think throughout the whole journey of cricket, a coach's main role is to instill a love of the game. So you're probably going to need at some stage a reasonable technical coach, and most good players have had that. Is that the best coach to follow them on that journey? Probably not. So it's just about, I think some of it's luck and timing when that happens and when they're ready to be coached in a certain way. And we often reflect back on where we've had success and attach that to a coach or a mentor or a significant person in our team that's really helped. But I do agree that the great coaches have got to be at that pivotal age. And I think around 14, 15 and 16, where most players are making decisions on whether cricket's going to be a fun activity, and whether they're going to go down the grade cricket route and pursue at that, or school cricket, or they're going to make it their career. So if we've got really good mentors and coaches at that age group, and I think it's more mentors, I really do. I don't think it's about coaching. I think it's, I reflect back on a great school teacher I had who was a rugby league coach. But he said to me at some point, are you going to take this stuff seriously, or are you just going to be your hobby, or what are you going to do? But you got to make a choice at some point, and that was around that age group. So I think that's crucial. But there's never a bad time to have a really good influence on your life. So I think it's a hard one to answer, to be honest.
Yeah.
There's another chapter of my book. There's never a bad time to have a good influence on your life. This is gold. Motty, I'll pay you the commission, okay? When the commission's over, and you can write the foreword. My God, there's never a bad time to have a good influence on your life. That is absolute gold. Now, when I first become head coach, actually the day after I became head coach of West Australia, I ran into Kevin Sheedy, the great AFL coach, and he gave me a really good exercise to do that anyone on this call can do as well. He said, go home tonight, get your journal, and write down all the great coaches you've had in your life since you're a little kid right through to now, and write down their strengths. And what will happen is that if you take a little piece of every coach you've had along the journey, that's the sort of coach you'll become, because they've had an influence on you. So, and it was really powerful. I started writing a few of my under-8s, Alan Abraham, so he just loved the game, little Sri Lankan, and he fancied my mum, which I didn't really like. But anyway, love of the game. And to this day, he's still a big influence on me, so and keeps in touch. So, but I went from all the way. So I think you learn the basics when you're a little kid. I think it's really important to teach kids the basics of the game, and then it just develops, you're still learning. I was still learning to the last ball I faced. So where is the most important time? I think every day is the most important time.
I think we need to stop that there before we delve into the dark secrets of the Langer family. We don't want to put too many things out there. I think what we have learnt, though, and it's come across particularly at the back end of this chat, is that whole phrase about the love of the game. I can definitely, and I'm pretty sure I can probably speak on behalf of everyone that's tuning in today, sense and feel through this virtual world both your love of the game. So to you, Matthew Mott and Justin Langer, thank you so much. Thank you to everyone for dealing with a couple of the technical issues there at some stage. I'm sure that's me and my weird setup at home, so apologies there. JL, I know you're in quarantine at the moment. You're about to head over to England with the Aussie boys for a one-day series. Best of luck with that. But can I also thank you? I've jotted down 1,000 things, but I'm going to remember your grandma Biddy and the thickness of her cheese sandwiches, but her comments, the wealth of quotes. I'm going to have to go back over this and listen and jot them all down, and I'm thoroughly looking forward to the next chapter, but also to the next book of Justin Langer. So thanks a lot, JL.
Thanks, Mel. JL. Thanks so much.
And Motty, I know the Aussie girls, the team has been announced for the series against the Kiwis at the back end of September. Wonderful to see an expanded squad and some new faces in there as well. We wish you all the very best with that as well, and keep being authentic, because I know the girls love it, particularly the Labrador side of you.
Thanks, Mel. Thanks to everyone as well. Thanks, JL. And thanks for JL for stepping in there as co-host there for a little bit as well.
I was going to get there, but I didn't want my check to bounce, because it passed on his, marketing campaign for his next book. Please keep an eye out for the communications in regards to the next one of the Inspired series. We are looking at beyond the boundary rope, so all things post-cricket careers, just like these two guys have done for us at the moment. Stay safe, be happy, and we'll see you soon.